topic is values. And so we're going to dive into personal values, and then it's important to know your personal values because you need to match them and align them with other people in your life, especially your partner. And so how I define values is it's the judgment on the important things in life. So the judgment on the important things in life. How did you want to rephrase that? You wanted to say it differently?
I would say that what my values are to me is how I prioritize who I want to be, and basically my decision-making process. What I consider when making a decision. What's first, what's second, what's third. If I can make a decision at that point, great. If I can't, I go further, or I investigate. Whatever the decision is.
Yeah, and I think now that I'm thinking about this, I should have rephrased it and saying how I judge what's important in my life, right? How I judge, because we all judge things, and we know that, and there's this shame complex behind judging things, but it's important. We do it for a survival thing, and now that we don't actually have to, survive every day, we have just practiced that habit quite a bit.
Right.
And so it's important to know your values because we want to know why we're doing what we're doing, right? Because if we can identify why we're doing what we're doing, then we can either start to increase that or give it better meaning, because we have the reasoning and the meanings behind what we do today are often not things that we came up with ourselves or even thought of ourselves. And so identifying why we're doing what we're doing and then what the common themes are help us understand, like, if those stories are in alignment with our highest purpose, or if it adds value, because we can be doing the exact same thing and have a completely different story to it and it be beneficial versus be harmful, right? So what's an example of that? Of doing things for a different story and having a different effect of it.
Well, you and I do that all the time, know. I might do the dishes because I need to practice doing the dishes because I don't like them, and if I don't do the dishes now, I'll do them later. You might do the dishes because having dishes makes you anxious because it makes you think it's not clean, and that bothers you about something about yourself. Okay. And so, we have two different reasons for doing the same thing.
Well, and I will just say this, I bounce back and forth between my reasons of doing the dishes. So I noticed before we got together, when I did the dishes, I was doing all the house chores. I got, I just felt exhausted all the time because I was doing everything myself. Mm-hmm. And so it was just another chore that made me exhausted. But then when we started living together, I started to think about how good it felt to help you out and not have you do everything. Mm-hmm. So he cooks in our house. And so when he cooks, it feels good for me to contribute and give back to him. And so changing that story of doing the same task, changes the outcome of how I feel about it.
Right.
Yeah, and so I guess I have two different beliefs about the dishes. Specifically, is one, I like to contribute and make things easier for you, and try and show up in the best way I can as a team. And then number two, it does make me anxious a little bit because it makes me feel as if I have this belief about following through. And so sometimes, I want everything to be done, mm-hmm. from beginning to end. I don't like letting it sit for a while. And so I feel... so I get the option to choose between those two beliefs, I guess. So if I'm having a bad day, I'm probably going to pick like the anxious one. If I'm having a great day or I'm very conscious and I'm in my body and I'm trying to participate to the best of my ability, mm-hmm. then I'm going to notice my belief and I can actually pick what one I want. And if you can do that enough during the day, you're going to have a fabulous day. And you're going to have a very powerful day, and you're going to feel like you are running your shit and running the world because you're literally showing up to every decision and every interaction as your best self.
Right.
And so this is just like the beginning of how easy it is to start to identify that, and that there's a little bit different options in how you experience your values.
Right.
So...
And so yesterday we talked about the hierarchy of needs, and this is a great example of a time when you can have the best intentions in your life, but if your needs aren't being met, your values will change. And so, the stealing bread if you're hungry example is a great, it's an all-time example, right? Because nobody is going to tell you not to steal bread if you're hungry and you don't have any money.
That's good.
And so, it's your job to identify and meet your needs so that you can operate on a different level of your needs, and then, work towards your values going forward. But if your values will be to meet your needs, whether you want them to or not. You can tell yourself all day that you're not going to, you either don't have needs or that they're being met, and then go, drink or escape somehow, play video games, distract yourself, be bored, a lot, not in control of your thoughts. And I don't want to say waste your time, but kind of just not be present in your own reality and be an active participant in your life. There's a time and a place for all those things for most people. But overuse creates an imbalance, which then leads to other issues. And most people, if you ask them, will not tell you that their values are to exist on this planet until they die with nothing to contribute. And so, that's what I think about when I think about myself, is like, if you said, I have this guilt complex with playing games. Like, I feel guilty because I'm like, why am I even doing this? And there might be a reason, a good distraction, something to check out on. But at the same time, I'm like, if you ask me if I should be doing this to make the most out of my life and what I want to do with it, I would tell you no. But sometimes it's necessary to find that balance of changing your brain patterns or thought patterns or distracting yourself in order to do the best, the quality over quantity.
Yeah, so to the video games, that's interesting because you've been working on reframing that for a little bit of time, because the story doesn't match up the needs it's meeting today. So today, playing video games, if it's not unbalanced and you know why you're doing it, and you're doing it to check out or some sort of meditation state, or just to shut your brain down, or even like, the great reset, like resetting, all of those are fabulous, wonderful, and they're needed, right? Especially with all of our outside stimulation and all the technology, whether or not you're using it to check out or not, it's still something we have to do when we're dealing with relationships and social stuff. And so that's redefining the story of what it's doing. And the quickest way to redefine the story of why you're doing what you're doing is to base it off of your needs or off of your values, right? And so your values will be, what I was thinking is that it's basically how you're going to show up in the world with a spin on it. Like, if you were to meet all your needs and have like a spin to it, style points, that's what your values will be. Because when you have a certain a specific set of values, you see the world through a different lens, plus all your experiences. And so you approach everything, all your needs, a different type of way. And so it helps shape your personality, and how people interact with you.
Right.
Yeah. So
when you say personality, that reminds me of just the balance between like the id, the ego, and the superego, which we won't necessarily get too much into at this point, but it is important to acknowledge sometimes your motivations and your inspiration, which we talked about yesterday, can be driven by your personality or your ego or something like that. So just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah. And so when we're not doing things by our values, I'm going to just read off a list of what it can look like or what it can feel like. So people will get in this state of lack, not having enough, because they're in a fear reality because their needs aren't being met and their values aren't being met. And so it's really difficult to talk about needs and values without combining them, because value, it's just difficult. So it'll go back and forth between them, and we'll get into the exact differences, I think maybe in the next video or two. So, but what it looks like is a person that's very resentful, or they can't let go of the past. They're like living in this old story and they're letting it play out today. they're not really identifying their values, what should be driving them, or the story behind it. And so they have probably adopted other people's beliefs about what they're doing, similar to Kyle with the video games. You know, you have this shame complex around them, probably because someone maybe said something, or you just feel, you know, some sort of way about it based on your past experiences. And so back then it may have not met his needs, or his values, or his definition and based on his experiences have changed, and so he values things differently, right? And so it's a completely different experience today. And so you know, if you're not very aware of your values, you'll live in this victimhood state where you know, things are always happening to you. You're not really actively participating. You'll have this feeling of loss without explanation, and this lack of passion because you're unable to connect the dots of why you're doing what you're doing, right? So like if you can't connect the dots, you're gonna feel like something's missing. And often if something's missing, we feel that need, like, or that value. We feel anything that's missing with something because you know, we consume so much. And so if you're not full, it's hard to create, and it's hard to collaborate, and it's hard to give if you're not feeling full. Give from a healthy state. Give from a healthy state. And then the last couple ones is just being scared and angry. And that goes to living in this fear state of, you know, not knowing why you're doing what you're doing and not having them meet your specific needs, because changing the story in your head of a need being met can add to your values and make, you know, just build your foundation even stronger. Because if I'm meeting a need, and then I have a reason for, let me think of an example. So in our relationship, you know, we played softball. We met at softball, and so I was at softball all the time. And so that was like my social, that's where I got my attention. And so when we got together, I got the attention from you, and that all of a sudden was as important to me. And I had to redefine the story behind it, because even though I valued being around my friends, you know, it didn't really match how much time I had or where my priorities took me, because I valued more a deeper connection. And so I sacrificed having a lot of shallow connections for one deep one, because it filled the same need. But I don't have shame around it, right? Because I value myself more. So anyways, yep, that's the rest of day 1. Day 2, day 3.
Day 3.
Day 3, week 2.